Hey y'all, my name is Aaron. I'll be your facilitator for today. And welcome to another episode of Being Black Emory. On this episode, we're talking about interracial dating. So we see Kanye and Kim, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and we will see folks in our community participating in interracial dating. Before we begin this conversation, let's introduce our panelists. Starting here.
Hey y'all, I'm Justin Burnett. I'm a first year. My pronouns are he, him, his, and probably major in sociology.
Hi everyone, my name is Roland. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a first year and I'm pre-nursing.
Hi, I'm Valerie. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a first year and I'm probably going to major in biology or chemistry.
Hi, my name is Mignon Jenkins. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a junior and I'm majoring in IDS with a concentration in cultural communication and competency.
Hi, my name is Sola. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a first year and I'm probably like pre-business.
Hi, my name is Dara. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a senior in the college and I'm majoring in linguistics and Korean studies.
Great. Well, I'm glad y'all are here. And we're going to kick off this conversation by just asking, what are some of the attitudes you grew up with, about interracial dating?
I grew up in a newly adapted environment. My aunt Angie had just married a white man from Oklahoma. White, not any other person, but white. So my family was really just getting adjusted to it. So I never really lived in a super toxic environment as it pertains to interracial relationships, but definitely developing.
Mm-hmm. Growing up, all the people around me were like black relationships. My family's very African, like they just came from Zimbabwe to England. So I was never really exposed to interracial dating. I'd never seen it growing up, so I didn't have an opinion on it. But they were never like, don't date this person, or only date people from Africa.
I went to a predominantly black high school, and when I say predominantly black, I mean black. And we talked shit about white people all the time. And my family is really African too, so they didn't have to say it, but in the back of my mind, I knew they're gonna be more willing to accept an African man if I bring home an African man than a white person. Mm-hmm. But in my school, we never really talked about it because there were no white people around, so it was never a thing.
Yeah, kind of similar. My parents were especially fine with anybody I would bring home, but certain close relatives never had to say anything, but it was quite obvious that they would definitely prefer me to bring home another black person. And so, not in my nuclear family, that opinion, but it definitely existed all around me in the outside family, so.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. My mom was like, don't bring home a white girl. But first of all, I'm not bringing home a girl. But you do see that very, common in black cultural, families. And so what do y'all think about that pressure or that, potential rejection from not bringing on a partner of the same race or culture?
Well, senior year of high school, I dated a white boy, actually. It was a band affair. It was love. I played flute. He played French horn. We were a marching band. We were star-crossed. And my aunt, I remember distinctly, after band practice, we went to Wendy's. And I was really upset because I had a 4-4. He didn't pay for it. And Mom was like, why didn't he pay for your 4-4? That's your man. These white men, da-da-da-da. She initially rejected him for sure. But she, at the end of the day, was happy as long as I was happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of the same thing with my parents too. I think that as long as I'm happy, they'll be okay.
I'm dating a white person right now, so when I used to bring him to my house, I'd be my mom, oh, he's just a friend, because I didn't want to face that rejection, because I knew in the back of my mind, oh, maybe she wouldn't be okay with someone who isn't black. But then eventually I fessed up and she was okay with it because he's genuinely a nice person and she didn't care about the race.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also a difference, I should say, between me dating a white straight person and a white queer person, because my boyfriend at the time was bisexual, as was I, and I think that was a deeper issue to it. So let me not say fully why that was, because my aunt is gay, and in the gay community, there's a lot of anti-bisexual sentiments. So she was more like, if you're with a guy who's bisexual, like, which is problematic, but I think that also had a lot to do with it. So I'll say that.
I actually had a similar experience to Mignon in high school. I also dated someone in band. I played clarinet, he played tuba.
With brass line.
And actually, like prior to us dating, my mom like noticed us talking like at a football game, and then later on she told me, "That boy likes you," and I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, what? And she was like, "I would be fine with it if you dated him," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So then we ended up dating.
So when we think about interracial, you see a lot of like media representation, right? And so you see Meghan Markle, like I mentioned earlier, Kim and Kanye. And so what do you think that had? What role is that playing in the Black community? And what are some attitudes or reactions have you heard about those couples?
Being from England and seeing Harry and Meghan Markle in the media a lot, there's been a lot of racist backlash towards Meghan. Like people saying she's tainting the royal family, and it's just really upsetting to hear, because British people won't outwardly be racist until like the Black people start meddling with their white people, and it's really sad to see.
Didn't the royal family just like kick somebody off of
their
like,
they
royal,
did,
like who's been there forever, but she's tainting the image. Interesting.
Do you think there's a difference between a Black woman dating someone who's non-Black, or versus a Black man dating someone who's non-Black?
Absolutely.
It's definitely
absolutely. I feel like, and I had a class with Diane Stewart, and we talked specifically about Black women feeling very dispensable in the dating game when you have so many factors just inhibiting Black men being able to date or even create their own wealth. Like it's difficult for Black women to feel like they have a good picking. So I feel like when Black women date outside of their race, it's not necessarily out of, I don't want to say like, what else are you gonna do? But like, it's out of, you have to look and expand at some point. But I feel like for Black men, particularly in college settings where they are outnumbered by Black women sevenfold, that they have this, sevenfold, they have this kind of, oh, I can date who I want to. I mean, just men have that type of ideology anyway, but like, it's different for sure. And it's like when you can date someone in your race and you choose not to, the motivations for why are just very interesting when you hear a Black man talk versus a Black woman.
I feel like Black men are like raised to be like, you should date a Black woman, period. Like even when my mom was talking to me when growing up, oh, be like, yo, I think I like this girl. And then start talking about how she's white, and then she'd be like, oh, why you want a white girl? And then she started asking questions. But if it was a Black girl, she'd be like, oh yeah, she's pretty. Boom, end of the conversation. So it's like Black men are raised to like, that we're supposed to date Black women or inside our race. I don't think that's the same for Black women, but I don't know.
I feel like the dichotomy is like, just because of the culture, like we've all talked about it, like even if it wasn't explicit, we've all like felt some pressure to date within, like to date another Black person. And so it's like, you kind of feel that you have to explain yourself if you don't date a Black person, right? It's not like just, okay, yeah, I'm dating a white person. It's like, here's why I'm dating a white person, right? That or just a non-Black person. I feel like that's kind of how it is within the Black community.
But do you think that pressure that both of y'all are, really pointing out or highlighting is justified amongst the Black community, considering our history in this country? Justified.
Justified.
Yes.
I think it is. If you look at Emmett Till, he was brutally murdered for talking to a white woman or whistling at a white woman, which is, we'll get into. Allegedly, but it's like with that distrust, a lot of times when Black men are put, particularly Black men, are put into these situations with white women, it's always, oh, they're trying to rape the white women, oh, they're trying to do this. And it's always some type of villainization of a black man when he's trying to get involved with the white woman. So from a mother's perspective, it's like, not necessarily, oh, I don't want you to date or love who you love, because at the end of the day, from my experience, I don't think black parents truly care. But it's about safety. It's about if you do something, if you and that white woman don't work out, is her father going to try to shoot you? Is her father going to try to murder you? Versus if you date a black woman, that fear is gone. Not saying everything in a relationship is going to go right, because that's not correct. But there's just an ounce of safety that we have to consider about it.
Do you feel safe?
Yes. So like,
Straight to it.
I haven't met his family yet. I'm meeting them like next month, and I'm like very scared because like when some white people are really weird when it comes to black people, especially when the children are dating them. It's like, I don't know. I feel like some people come towards it really weirdly, and it makes me uncomfortable.
It could probably be like different too, because he's a white man dating a black girl, and not the other way around. Yeah.
We've been speaking solely in terms of black and white, but what about black and like non-white partners?
I feel like the pressure is definitely less. Like if I were to bring home like a Latinx person or something like that, then it would be like, oh, okay. You know, it's just kind of more of like, because of like you stated, like because of the history, it's more of just like, we don't want white partners. It's not really, we don't want other racial partners.
I feel like a lot of people say when they don't want a white partner, be like, oh, they don't understand, they're not gonna understand history. But when it comes to a Latinx partner, it's different, because like colored people in general have faced oppression for like all of history. So I guess that shared history kind of similar.
Do you think that's a primary difference though? Right? Because we understand like anti-blackness can function in all types of communities, right? And so we don't think about that. Why is it there's a level of, okay, this is a little bit more okay to date someone who's non-white, well, also wrong. Not just you, but
yeah. I just think phenotypically it's a little less jarring to see like some like really pale, stark white man versus like some, I don't know, like a Cuban guy like next to, not to say there aren't white Cubans, but next to a black woman. It's just a little different. And I also want to bring in the point, just because it's not a white partner, there's still a high, when you get into other races, there's this fetishization thing that happens that we need to unpack. Like in high school, in the same band program, there's this guy, I don't know his name, but he played tuba, he was a black guy, and he exclusively dated Asian women. And it was like, that's, like, I'm not gonna tell you you can't date Asian women, but like, why exclusively Asian women? Like, what is it about Asian women in that stereotype, or how they're represented in media, that makes you seek them out purposely over not even just black women, but other races in general? Like, you know what I mean? It's just kind of weird.
I think that's a good point, right? So when does a preference become a fetish in these particular situations?
I feel like it might be like, if it's more than just, oh, I'm attracted to them, and you have like reasons other than just the attraction, then it's a fetish. So like, I'm attracted to black women, so it's like, I like black women because I'm attracted to them. Period. If it's like, I like black women because I think they're more aggressive and I think that sex is gonna be great, that's a fetish.
Other thoughts? What do y'all think?
I think it becomes a fetish when it's just of the flesh, especially, and not dating. I feel like a lot of times, and here at Emory too, we have black men who will be, you know, running around in circles dealing with black women behind closed doors and under sheets and in bedrooms. But when it actually comes to walking on Cox Bridge with the woman, you're holding hands with a white woman all of a sudden. Okay, but you stay in bed with black women. You know who you are. You know who you are.
Oh, jeez. Other thoughts?
The sign is delicious.
I agree
No.
with that 100%. Because when I would interact with people of other races, they'd be like, "Oh, I've never been with a black woman before," and I'm like, "So that's supposed to be like, is it gonna be any different than being with anyone else?" And I know they mean it in like a sexual way, not like actually like dating. So it's that kind of thing that just bugs me. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned flesh. What do you mean by flesh?
Sexual, lustful, not necessarily always having to do with sex, but this idealization of or liking someone specifically because of their phenotype. Like loving black women, well, black women are loved in a very particular way. You know, we love your ass. There's a lot of fetishization around the body, around the skin, not so much around the hair, not so much softness, not so much forehead kisses, not so much of this gentle stuff. It's always very like either these strong, powerful things or this hyper-sexualized like body and skin, chocolate toffee. Like it's something having to do with consumption that's always mentioned when we're talking about how a black woman looks. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
Is it the experience of other black women on the panel? Similar?
I mean, in my high school, it really sucks because if I'm walking down the hallway minding my business, you know, as I do, and there's some like ghetto ass kid down the hall, he's just staring at my ass and then decides to catcall. It's really gross because no one ever approaches me because I'm smart. Everyone at that school knows I'm smart, but no one ever approaches me because of that. They see my fat ass and some jeans, and that's all they want to holler at, and it's awful.
I would say that's like my experience too. I'll say with like dating apps, for example, like Tinder or whatever, if someone that is non-black, no matter what race, starts a conversation with me, they're like, "Oh, what a nice rack," or "I love your ass," or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And it's never like, "I want to get to know you," or anything like that. Or like you said before, it's like, "Have you ever been with a insert race here, man?" I've never been with a black woman. So.
Wow.
Isn't it crazy how they think black women just don't?
Yeah.
Just don't try anything other than what they.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I can get like if you see someone, let's be honest, when you look at someone, their face is the first thing that in your mind you're like, oh, are they attractive or not? Which makes you go talk to them. So I can understand you going up to someone to talk to them, but then it can take like a path of one or two ways. You can either be like, oh, this person seems cool. I want to get to know their opinions, what they believe in, all that stuff, or all the physical things that, so sorry, I forgot your name.
Mignon.
All the things that Mignon said.
Right.
They never want to get to know what's inside your head, but everything that's outside on your body.
For the guys, I have a question. So I feel like black women, especially on media, I see us kind of criticizing and critiquing the way we are loved, kind of like I talked about, but like, what do you guys notice about the way you are loved as opposed to men of other races? Because I feel like I really don't hear a lot of black men being like, I'm fetishized and I hate it, or like I don't, not saying that men like it, but like I very, very rarely hear critiques.
I've heard some people talk about like some white girls being like, "Oh, I really like black guys," and then they're like, okay, it's kind of weird. Like, other than that, I ain't really heard that.
I feel like it's just like, I don't know, either a combination of like we're just not as sensitive to it, or like we just like, I don't know, but like we, like Shola said, you wouldn't see, like wouldn't know like if we were being fetishized. Like that's just kind of like we don't pay attention to it as much because it's just like I really don't know why, but it's just like you're not as perceptive about that, or like I don't know.
I feel like black men are more likely to be loved in public than in private, as opposed to a black woman. And I wasn't sure where you guys are with that, because I feel like with a white girl, yeah, this poor little black man, like, cool, got me one, like, but I feel like black women systemic, like, for a while have been loved and I mean even all the way back to slavery. Like slave masters were taking and raping black women because they saw their bodies as so not I'm gonna go to the reasons, but like it's always been this private affair with black women and love. And with black men, y'all are loved publicly by a lot of different races, and that's just not the same case for black women.
So many of you have talked about the toys of being black, right, and navigating dating, but would you say that being in an interracial relationship is more emotionally laborious?
Yes.
How so, may I ask?
From my experience, just with Colin, that was his name, the white guy I was with, we connected a lot as creatives. However, there were just certain things he just didn't understand. I was applying to schools, he was a junior, and I was going through a lot of Questbridge things, financial aid things I didn't even know the answers to. Yet he has something set up with his mom, and he just I couldn't have that conversation with him because this guy would get annoyed because his future is set up. And he didn't understand exactly why I was feeling the way I did during that time, because Questbridge was difficult. But like you know, even going over his house, like your family has been playing instruments for years. Like I had a school-owned instrument that I learned from and never had a private lesson. There were just stark differences that once we started to talk about, like Mignon, his mom would ask me, how was da-da-da-da. It wasn't the same as Colin's experience. And even if I would say what my experience was, it just felt wasted on them because those are white ears and I have a black experience and they just didn't understand certain aspects of it. And I didn't have the energy to always explain that to them. And I don't necessarily need to, you know what I mean? Like this is what I'm going through, yet with a black partner, I feel like we could at least cry together a little bit more. Or like, you know, even like when when Mike Brown was just so much was happening, I could talk to Colin about that stuff, but like I couldn't cry with Colin about that stuff. Like there's a sacrifice that you make in a relationship as a collective consciousness. Like there's this collective unity and blackness in a relationship that you kind of need for certain things. Like being black is just emotionally laborious as it is. So if you don't have someone to counteract that, they can appreciate that and hug you and love you through it all they want to, but they will never understand. And I can't sacrifice that for someone who hasn't bled the same way I have or my people have. So yes, it's more laborious, and it's not worth the labor to me.
I don't feel.
No, go ahead.
I don't feel that it's emotionally laborious. Like, yes, being with him is like a lot different than being with a black person, and like he's made me more emotional in like good ways. And I don't feel like being with a white person per se. Like, yes, some black struggles you just won't understand, but I'm not gonna get pressed over that because I feel like I can talk to other people about that. And yes, we won't be able to relate on a lot of things, but there's also things we do relate on a lot. And I just don't feel like, I mean, I have dated a black person, and comparing it to dating a white person, I feel like there's an equal amount of like emotional strife with both of them.
Yeah, what I would say is that like, I understand your point about maybe he's not going to be able to understand everything. Sure, but I don't necessarily think that in order for a relationship to like be emotionally like stable and connected, that both partners have to understand each other well. They just have to be able to accept and be able to work with you through that. Because I mean, think of just like heteronormative relationships. The man is not going to understand the woman's struggles. Like that's just like, you're never going to fully understand being a woman in this world. And so like to say that we have to be able to understand each other on all points for this like relationship to be like emotionally like secure or whatever, I don't believe that. So I think that it's possible to connect with someone who maybe doesn't have the black experience just as well as I can connect with someone who has the black experience. Maybe they might understand me more, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a better partner, or that, you know, they're going to love me more, or that I'm going to have a better relationship. It just means that we maybe started from a similar understanding.
I mean, those connections that you're saying, like you don't really bridge the gap, and like gender and race are just two different things. Like we coincide with people all the time, but we have to, let's be real. The black experience and the white experience, that shapes your life way different than, well, I'm not way different. But like way differently than being a man or a woman. Like that's just the nature of relationships. And then like even the interracial relationships that are same sex, like regardless, there's connections that aren't there, and you're the one that has to forge the bridge to them. And that's just whether it's more emotional labor that you're willing to do. That's cool, but it's more emotional labor. Period.
For you, what's his name? Colin, the white guy?
Yeah.
All right. Wow. Do you think you would have connected more if you were from the same economic class? Because like the first part of what you said was that was straight economics.
Some of it, but we also have to think about why Black people systemically are in the position that they're in. Just because of just because he is white, he does have a benefit of his class. So that is coinciding.
Yeah, but you can date a poor white person.
I mean, yeah, but like who I dated wasn't, and
I
like a lot of times, like white people, they're not poor because they're white. You know what I mean? Like a lot of Black people are poor because they are Black. So socioeconomic status and class and race, it's at the end of the day, it's all connected.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I still feel like the generalization of Blacks being poor, right? Number one, I feel like that's a problematic like generalization to make.
I'm not saying all Blacks are poor.
Like
I'm saying Black people have had things to them that happen systemically that make them more likely to be economically disadvantaged.
Sure. But like then secondly, to the point of like all Blacks don't have the same experience, right? Like we can put two Black people in a room and they can have nothing in common besides the color of the skin, and that doesn't even mean like the societal things, right? Like Kanye's kids don't have my experience. Like that's just facts. Like, and I honestly, like, I didn't grow up poor, right? I'm thankful for my parents. I didn't grow up on the streets, so I don't even have the same experience as other Black people do, right? And so, like, it would even be, like, hard for, say, like, North, if she's going to date someone, to, you know, connect with someone like me, or to connect with even someone, like, who's even from a lower socioeconomic bracket. So I feel like those connections, we can't just generalize and say they're going to be able to connect with me just because they're Black.
Also, North has a white mom. Also,
like that's true. Yeah,
she's like, she still has a big amount of white experience shaping the way she should.
Sure, but we can talk about Jay-Z and Beyonce's kids. They're not going to have the same experience either.
Sure.
Like that's just my point. Is that like Black experience is across a broad range, and I don't think we can generalize to say that if you're Black, you're going to be able to empathize with other people just because you share that same not experience, but same skin tone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a generalization, but like CCS coach James Baldwin are not writing books about Black consciousness for nothing. Like there is a collective Black consciousness, whether you don't tap into it or not, cool. But if you do and your partner is not, and that's important to you, then it's more emotional labor. But regardless, if you experience the Black experience not even a certain way, but it affects the way you communicate with your partner. And if you can't acknowledge that, then that's something you and your partner need to talk about.
I mean, I do agree with you to that sense. Like, I find that when I'm with Black people, like obviously, we all feel like sometimes when we're with Black people, we act a lot different than when we act with white people. Like even with my boyfriend, it took me a while to get comfortable to make the kind of jokes, like act the way I would act with like my Black cousins at like a family party. But at the same time, I feel like we can connect on a different level than like the disconnect there is between the Black conscience and like his white privilege. You know what I mean?
But I have a question, right? You said you had to adjust to him, like adjust your own Black culture identity to him. Would you not consider that a form of labor, a form of work that you have to put in for the relationship that he necessarily doesn't have to?
Like in that sense, yeah, I do feel like there was emotional labor in that way. But at the same time, I feel like he doesn't feel like the emotional labor as much, but like he has to learn to adjust to the problems that I will face in my life being Black, or the different experiences I will face in my life being Black, because we'll never connect on that level. But like he is actively trying to understand it more.
And that's a good question, right? Because when big national, forms of violence against Black people, vis-a-vis, police brutality or a massacre, right? How do you think having a non-Black partner will like influence that? Or how will y'all work through that? I know there's mention of like, you don't have to be, not all Black people empathize with each other, right? But what happens in those situations? What do you do? what's the line between understanding and knowing that incident happening versus like feeling that?
This is a lot. There's a lot to unpack here.
Right.
I've never had the experience of interracial dating just because of where I went to school and my environment. But after listening to everyone's stories, I do have a question. So, is there a difference between, say, like a white person who grew up, let's say College Park where I grew up, which was really ghetto, and like a black person, and they had no other black friends, they're around white people 24/7, they live in this kind of 1% society, for the sake of my hypothesis here. Do you think that they would be different, and like, especially in their relationships in terms of understanding their partner's struggles if their partner was black? Specifically the black person living in the 1%.
I mean,
I was,
go ahead.
in all my life, I've lived in like predominantly white neighborhoods. I told you that in my graduating class, I was one of 3 people who were black. Like, everyone around me was just white. It was a lot of whiteness. And like, the only time I would get exposed to black culture was when I hung around my family in England. So like, I would only see them once a year, so I'd feel more detached from like black culture. And like, I feel like I still can understand black struggle on a deeper level, even though I've lived in like a higher like socioeconomic level. I still feel the racism, or like, it's not even blatant. Like sometimes, like I remember one time in elementary school, my friend invited another friend to her house for a sleepover, and I was like, oh, can I come too? And she was like, my family doesn't really like black people. And I was like, oh, okay, that hurt. So like, I feel like I can understand black struggle on that level, the level that we all feel it on like day-to-day lives.
Yeah, microaggressions.
Yeah.
Do build up.
So since we talked a lot about white people, but like, what about other races, like specifically like Asian people, or like?
Okay, so I've never gone as far as thinking of like actually engaging in a relationship with an Asian person, because in my mind they're not interested in the slightest. Like in the media, I don't see a lot of interracial relationships between an Asian person and a black person. And just from where I grew up, I know that there's some kind of, like there's a social kind of strict thing where like a lot of Asian parents tell their kids to date Asian women or men, like to date inside their race. So I never even thought that an Asian person could be interested in me. For example, I live in the Alabama dorm, and our president, Jerry, I think he's fine as fuck, but I never actually think that it could work because I don't think he's interested in me, and I'm not gonna set myself up. Yeah.
So I will say that is true. There is this like there's like anti-blackness in the Asian community. That's a very real thing, but Asian parents they are really, really strict on their children. That is a real thing too, and they don't typically like for their children to date outside of their race, even outside of their own like nationality. So like if a Korean person wanted to date someone that was like Japanese, that's even
clearly
clearly
none of us have that experience, but do you feel like it might be similar, like for like, I don't know, similar reasons or like similar like things to the culture within the black community of the same idea?
I feel like, particularly in the Asian community, like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this concept of like a model minority.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they also are a marginalized group or whatever or whatnot. But white people decades ago like started to kind of push them as like, look how perfect this Asian family is. Like, this child is becoming a doctor and goes to Harvard and all of this, like, why can't you other minorities be like them? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of been like a thing. So ever since then, there's been like this sentiment in the Asian community that like they're like I don't want to say better than or whatever, but they need to like stay within their own community.
I
I
feel
would
like.
say.
Go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, continue.
Okay.
And aren't you dating someone?
Oh well, not currently,
No,
but
no.
I do have experience dating someone Asian. What I always say, like, compared to like the relationship with someone that was white, the Asian person, like, they're typically, like I said with the parents, they're not as quick to like introduce me to their parents. That's like a very, very big thing. So, but with your question about like them being interested, I will definitely say that like the interest is there. They also kind of, well, I guess with Asian men particularly, they also like think the same way. They don't think that we're interested in them at all too. So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of just like someone on the either side has to like start the conversation because
After this,
think
I'm
the
gonna go
same.
shoot my shot.
yeah,
As
so
you
you're
should,
shot to
as
Jerry.
you should.
Yeah.
Jerry, if you're watching this, slide in her DMs.
But on that note, that's the episode. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.
You forgot to tell them to like, comment, and subscribe.
Well, we usually have
It's all fake.
usually people just be clapping generally.
Say that.
This